switched the order of the agenda so that the speaker after him actually goes first in the interim, in the interest of time. So with that, I welcome you all. And the other thing is also just to keep in mind that, we are trying to make this more serviceable to our members. So we really do appreciate your feedback, suggestions, and thoughts on where to go next. The next upcoming workshop is going to be on storytelling with, led by the Outriders Network. So we do hope that you join us for that in the next 2 weeks. And for that, I welcome you again and hand it over to Giovanni, please.
Thank you. Thank you a lot to IRI for this invitation and for the idea of setting up this workshop on the Italian infodemic, so to say. And we will try to kind of tell you what we did through Pagella Politica and through the SOMA Network during this infodemic that occurred in the whole world, that is still occurring. So the most important thing that I would like to tell you in the few minutes that I have is that we, as Pagella Politica, as a fact-checking organization, we entered into this crisis in one shape, and we came up, I must say, completely different. Now, I have something of a kind of a vacuum cleaner in the background, really noisy. So if someone could please mute them. Oh, that's great. Thank you. So as I was saying, we entered into this crisis in one shape, and we are coming out as different now. And the reason is very simple. We have started this during when the pandemic arrived in Italy, so to say. We were just a political fact-checking organization, mainly a political fact-checking organization through Pagella Politica. And we were working mainly into checking politicians' statements around Italian politics, But then we saw that that wasn't enough anymore, because much of the disinformation that was circulating around the COVID-19 was had nothing to do with politics in the stricter sense. Had a lot to do, for example, with fake remedies, conspiracy theories about origins of the virus. So there was a whole bunch of other stuff out there. And so just posing ourselves as a political organization, fact-checking political organization wasn't enough anymore. So on April 2, 2020, we went live with a new project that we started, which is called FACTA. And it is a new project entirely devoted to non-political fact-checking, to so-called debunking or verification. That was a big effort by our team, also helped by the SOMA Network and some other grants that were coming out for fact-checkers in that period. And I said in the beginning that we were different because we kind of mutated during this crisis. We are now more or less double size as a team, and we have two parallel projects going on in fact-checking different kind of information. So as I have to introduce the agenda, we'll try to give you practical examples of what we did into these two different projects that we have. The first one is our traditional one, Pagella, which is now 8 years old. And my colleague and the deputy director of Pagella Politica, Tommaso Canetta, will explain to you a little bit of what happened when we were fact-checking Italian politicians during the COVID-19 crisis. But after that, we will leave the floor to Camilla, which is head of debunking at FACTA. And she will tell you a little bit about what happened when we started to debunk what came out to be more than 200 different pieces of disinformation that we encountered into the past few weeks. And one of the most amazing things that happened, aside from this, our work focused on Italy, was also that we were able to came together as a community of fact checkers and do a lot of work really in cooperation with other partners, both inside and outside the SOMA partnership and the SOMA project. And Silvia, which is our project manager, will explain a little bit to us what happened when we started to work on cooperative investigations and international collaborations against disinformation, drawing some examples from the SOMA project, so to say. And finally, at the heart of this of the SOMA project and of the SOMA consortium, there is also a common tool that can be used by its members in order to carry out collective investigations. So our final speaker today will be Nikos from ATC, that will explain you how the SOMA platform works and what are its useful tools and how it can be instrumental in building a network. Now, I leave without further ado. If Tommaso is with us now, I don't know. We have kind of probably not. So while we try to fix this technical issue, we will then switch the order of the presentations, and I will leave the floor to Camilla from Facta that will talk about debunking during this pandemic. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Giovanni. I'm trying to share my screen. Just a second. Okay, can you all see my screen? Okay, nice to meet you all. As Giovanni, I'm Camilla Vagnozzi, and as Giovanni said, I'm the head of debunking at Facta. And at the beginning of April, Pagella Politica launched a new project called Facta that is all focused on debunking. Facta's slogan in Italian is "Scegli a chi non credere," and in English we can translate our payoff or slogan with "choose what not to believe," and it summarizes our goal. So we try to inform our readers about which news circulating on traditional media, on new media, on social network are false, which one are true, which one are decontextualized or inaccurate. On Facta's website, you can find two different types of content. We actually have one section that is called Storie, and in English it's like stories, in which you can find a medium-long article written like in-depth analysis. And then we actually have another section that is called Anti-Bufale, that is pretty focused on debunking article. In this section, we actually have different categories because we actually have different type of disinformation or misinformation, and those categories are fake news, old news, real news, because sometimes our readers send and are still sending us news that they think that are false, we verified it and they are true. So we actually have a categories for this particular type of news that are real. And then we actually also have satirical news, out of context, and modify image. So this is like the Facta structure. We can talk about it. Talking about today, my contribution to our webinar is debunking virus-related disinfo challenges and opportunities. And I'm going to try to share with you all about my work in Italy during the COVID-19 pandemic. Let me start from the challenges that we faced. Facta, as I said, is a spin-off of Pagella Politica, and it has burned really in the middle of a global health emergency. Let me be sure you understand what we had to face. FACTA was a totally new and complex project, generating a huge attention, and it was born during a pandemic crisis while the team was living in Lombardia, the Italian region that has been called like the new Wuhan due to the level of infection that we had. And FACTA was born during a lockdown that in that occasion, no one was had a chance or was able to do any meeting or to meet anyone, not only friends, but also our colleagues. And we were all new colleagues. In fact, I had to coordinate people who have never worked together before. Our project had like directly accessibility as one of the pillars. We daily receive different type of reports that could be potentially fake news. Our readers can send it in different ways. There are three main ways to send it to us, and we actually have a WhatsApp service. We have 2 different emails accounts and also 3 different social networks, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. During the first 3 months of work, we received more than 6,400 WhatsApp messages. We have produced over 330 debunking articles. We count hundreds of newsletter subscriptions, and we can say approximately 1,300 people are receiving our WhatsApp daily broadcast. It's like our daily headlines linking to all articles that we publish during the day. We cover different types of content, starting from articles, viral text messages through WhatsApp, videos, photos, images, voice messages, Facebook posts, tweets. I haven't written it, but also pictures that have been shared on Instagram. It's important to underline an aspect that not all the material that we have received and that we are still now receiving can be fact-checked. To do it, we need news, articles, text messages, photos, videos that have some data or that are related to some real event or that can be linked with some official documents or studies. When we received from our readers a request without at least one of this type of information, if we can call it in that way, it happens that we can fact check or debunk it. Regarding that, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we noticed that lots of people were sending us and are still sending us questions or articles about different type of health issue. We are not doctors, and we are in the middle of a pandemic related with a new virus. So we weren't always able to answer to our readers, giving them a correct answer and or a fact check or a debunking article. Sometimes we add, and we still have the official information that we need in order to answer them, but sometimes we have not. And in that cases, there is nothing that we can do. The only thing that we can do is trying to send to our readers like the most official links that we have related with the World Health Organization or something like that, in order to give them the best information that we have. But it's not, in that case, it's not one of our fact-checking or debunking article. So at this point, what I believe and what I want to underline is that without official documents, studies, experts, or reports, our work cannot exist. Going back to our job during COVID-19 pandemic, we are all Italian, and we work in Italian, and we publish articles in Italian. What we notice is that often during the COVID-19 pandemic, some of Italian fake news about COVID-19 have been translated into other languages, getting then like an international resonance as a story about COVID-19 and thrombosis. This case we are talking about in April. There was on Facebook has been published a post by an Italian doctor claiming that COVID-19 patients are being like misdiagnosed with pneumonia when they actually have thrombosis. Severe COVID-19 has been really associated with cases of thrombosis, but that does not mean that the current diagnosis or treatment of COVID-19 is wrong. There is no evidence about it. Apart from that, this Facebook post that we can identify as the origin of this case of disinformation, Facebook post that was written in Italian, has then been translated in many different languages and has traveled across many different countries. I have a short list for you because this fake news has flying to Latin America, in Honduras, Paraguay, Mexico, Bolivia, and Argentina, and then in Europe, apart from Italy, also in Spain, Germany, and England, and then in the United States, Canada, Asia with India and Philippines, and in Africa as well. So in that case, we had a case of disinformation that was born in Italy without any official data or report about it, and then that has spread all over the world, maintaining the same topics, and apart from the translation in another languages, in lots of cases, we actually have also the same sentences, the same Italian sentences as only being translated in another languages. Then, if we want to quote our contribution during the past weeks, we can also mention some example of a real news that have been published outside Italy, so out of context and in a wrong context, in a wrong way, and a real news turn into fake news. The references here is to some videos of quarantined Italian singing songs from their balcony. In the middle of the pandemic, in fact, during March 2020, we can say one small bright spot of this global crisis has been the lots of viral videos of Italian neighbors singing songs or playing instruments together from their apartment balconies. What happens is that lots of Twitter users have edited the clips with audio from live recordings of their favorite pop songs. So we actually have real video showing Italian people outside their balcony during a lockdown quarantine with fake audios. So Italians were singing like Rihanna's or Nicki Minaj or Lord's song instead of the Italian national anthem. That was the real audio of that video. The fun fact we can say is that even some celebrities like Katy Perry and Madonna shared on their official Twitter accounts fake videos, videos with showing Italians on their balcony, but with fake audio, so with audio related with Katy Perry or Madonna's song. If I'm asked in that case to comment here, my take is that in such a chaotic times, it's like disastering to see misinformation, even intended as a joke, to be spread really so easily and so quickly. Then, in order to close this short section regarding the spread of disinformation in Italy during the COVID-19 pandemic, I want to focus on the disinformation that we are now fighting, like every day now since 10 days. In fact, during the last 10 days, we can say that have progressively turned back to what we can say, not yet, but similar to a normal life. We need to respect some rules in order to limit the spread of COVID-19, but we are not under a restrict lockdown anymore. What we notice is that the pandemic crisis has absolutely changed the daily life for Italians, but has also changed the fight against the disinformation for fact-checkers. During the lockdown, 90% of our articles were about COVID-19. Nowadays, I can say that the pandemic is contained to up to 50% of our works. We noticed that before the COVID-19, Italian main topic on disinformation was around immigrants, violence, racism, or religious hate, and all these themes have been suspended during the peak of the pandemic, but now they are back in the game and we are every day working on it. Then, okay. Let me now enter to the second part of my contribution, so focuses on opportunities. What I can say is that being a fact checker or a debunker during this pandemic gave us the opportunity to make the difference. We received lots of requests from common citizens asking us what they can or cannot believe, if the information they received were true or false, how much they should be worried. The infodemic that has been developed around COVID-19 gave us the opportunity to do our work in the best way possible, trying to win, if it's possible to win, we hope so, against the universe of disinformation and misinformation, and becoming like socially and ethically relevant. Then I can say that being a fact checker or a debunker in the middle of a global health emergency gave us the opportunity to demonstrate like how necessary is our work. The feeling I have is that from now on, we actually have the opportunity to let our readers like better understand our mission, our role, and our job in a different way. Looking at the world of the information in Italy, I think that we could potentially be like an alternative, a real alternative to traditional journalism and media. Our readers trust us, and our articles are like a benchmark for them, and we actually have to invest on it. Then I can say that being a fact checker or a debunker during COVID-19 lockdown gave us the opportunity to understand that we are really lucky, because if we have a computer, an internet connection, a mobile, we can work from everywhere. As I said, we are extremely lucky because we actually have the easy possibility to be always connected with what happens in the world of information and disinformation. We can be always there and look at what is happening and work on it. Working during the COVID-19 pandemic as a fact checker and a debunker gave me the opportunity to better understand what are the values on which my job is based. And those values are, I think, mainly three: transparency, impartiality, and professionalism. And I think that I have nothing to do more about that. And in conclusion, being a fact checker or a debunker in the middle of a global health emergency made us understand what we need to be able to guarantee in order to give an excellent service to citizens. We don't need so much to do a good job. We actually need data, official reports, experts, and of course, press of freedom. Thank you. If you have any question, I'm here.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much.
I understand Tommaso's on, potentially, Brady?
Yes.
There he is. Okay. The floor is yours.
Okay, can you hear me? Great. Okay, hello everybody. I am Tommaso Canetta, Deputy Director of Pagella Politica, and my main task is to manage the political fact-checking part of our project. So I'm going to give you some practical advice we learned from our experience in these weeks of pandemic. So before the pandemic, we were used to have a great variety of topics discussed by the politicians in just 1 week. Economy, legislation, migration, foreign policy, security, social inequality, and so on. But when the pandemic arrived in Italy, or better, when the topic of the pandemic arrived in Italy, in just a few days, it became the only topic of discussion for everyone, and of course, also for the politicians. So what basically happened is that a lot of politicians, often with little or no scientific background, started talking a lot about scientific matter. So material errors and imprecisions were quite common, but very often the politicians talking about COVID-19 were quoting something they read online or watched on TV. And so here's the first advice we learned from our experience. If you're specialized in fact-checking politicians' statements, find internal resources or a partner specialized in debunking false news, especially scientific or medical news. The cooperation between Pagella Politica and Facta, our debunking project, has been of invaluable help during these last months. And just let me give you an example. Matteo Salvini, the leader of the Lega Party, the 25th of March announced an urgent interrogation to the Italian Prime Minister about the fact that the new coronavirus has been created by Chinese scientists in a lab. because a TV program would demonstrate so. So we checked the TV program and found out that it was indeed about Chinese scientists creating a coronavirus in a lab for research purposes, but it was from 2015 and had nothing to do with COVID-19. It started circulating on WhatsApp now because it had all the right ingredients to stir popular indignation, but the core message was false. So checking the news, in this case, true but old and misinterpreted, was fundamental for checking the statement of the politician. But other examples can be about politicians commenting a video which has been altered, or images altered as well, or politicians spreading the words of, for example, some old expert which is now not considered particularly reliable, and so on. So speaking of it's false that the new coronavirus has been created in a lab, a second advice I can give you is to be very cautious in the expressions you use, to use words that can protect you from unexpected evolution in the topic. For example, we try to avoid to say the virus has not been created by scientists in a lab. We prefer to say the majority of the scientific community believe that COVID-19 has a natural origin because the genome of the virus is not compatible with the virus created in a lab, and so on. But we learn this cautiousness, of course, by making mistakes by ourselves. At the beginning of the pandemic, we wrote, for example, that using face masks is not very helpful to fight the virus. And we use the World Health Organization as a source, so a really reliable source. And back then, the use of the face masks was suggested only to people already with the disease and to the people taking care of them. But now the situation has changed, and the use of face masks by the whole population is considered, for example, by ACDC, the European Center for Disease Control and Prevention, potentially useful to contain the pandemic. So we have to change, our statements, our verifications. Other possible examples are about claims that some medicine is a miraculous cure for the virus. In Italy, we witnessed something similar claims about the Avigan from Japan, or about Abidol from Russia, and others. The claims usually is based on rumors about ongoing experimentation. And so we can say that lacks scientific solid base, but we prefer not to say that that medicine is not going to work for sure. The scientific information about this virus, which is new and still very not well researched yet, can always change. So it's better to always be cautious in our verdicts. Now let's talk about experts. In our organization, we have people specialized in literature, philosophy, law, communication, etc. We are not scientists, and we are not very well prepared in scientific matters, such as epidemiology, immunology, and so on, medicine in general. So for us, it has been very useful to have a pool of reliable experts to consult. And I think that in this time of pandemic, every media outlet should spend time and energy in creating a network of scientists that can be trusted. They can be used for different purposes. First, if we are writing a scientific article and we want to give the readers more details about matter, or a clearer explanation of a technical part of a technical aspect of the fact-checking, the voice of the expert can be important. Or if we need to have preliminary knowledge of a difficult matter, the expert can be a useful teacher for us. Or he or she can help us in finding a piece of scientific official information, a study, a research paper, or similar. What we should not use the single expert for, though, is to have his or her opinion to decide if what a politician said is true or false. In this case, we prefer to have written evidence, for example, to say that the majority of the scientific community have this or that opinion that confirms or disproves what the politician said. A quick example. When in the past we wrote about climate change, it's an unrelated topic, but still, we used the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, to say that the vast majority of the scientists believe in global warming, but you can always find, the unorthodox position of just one expert. So for us, it's incorrect to use the opinion of the single one to support our verdict. And now, especially about COVID-19, we saw, mostly in television, but not only, that different experts have different opinions. So I think it's okay to ask them for help in understanding things that are not in our field of specialization, but always keeping in mind that the situation is still very new and confused and nobody has the absolute truth in their pocket. Other two tips based on our experience that I can give you about political fact-checking during the pandemic are: first, and this can look stupid, but it's not, believe me, is to save all the materials you find when you write a fact-checking and archive it so it's easy to consult again. We use just a small minority of the material we found or download during the research phase of our fact-checking work, but the remaining material often turns out to be very useful the next week, the next day, and so on. So never lose it or make it difficult to recover. And second, find the time to read again what you have published in the last weeks during the pandemic, looking for patterns and starting points. These weeks have been quite hectic for us, and I suspect for every fact-checking organization. And so we were basically always chasing the news and the statements. But if you find the time or the person to look at what you have published about the pandemic, probably you see that having basically all the politicians talking about a single topic, some recurring themes are there, or that you can abstract some general result from all the work done. In this case, you can write some interesting, longer analysis, going deeper. For example, we wrote an analysis about which are the more reliable public sources of information about COVID-19, because we faced many times the problem during our work, and we thought that also the readers could find such an article useful. Other examples could be articles about which are the false news about the coronavirus more spread by politicians, or how politics reacted to the same behavior from different foreign actors. For example, when foreign states gave their help to Italy in the middle of the crisis, the reaction toward Russia was different than Germany, and so on. So it's another interesting angle to look at what you have already published. We are now working on such ideas, especially with Facta, and Camilla probably already told you. But also Pagella Politica, we are planning to study again what you've published and what you've wrote during these weeks to find ideas for some in-depth analysis. An idea that I'm thinking about these days, for example, is to tell the story of how the European Union responded to the pandemic crisis through our fact-checking. We had a very heated discussion in Italy about this topic. First about the European Stability Mechanism, then about the Recovery Fund, and when the German Constitutional Court talked about it's also about the quantitative easing of the European Central Bank, and so on. So just looking again at your work can give you, new ideas to abstract some general information from all the single analysis. Now, last but not least, the importance of international cooperation. With the pandemic being a global phenomenon, now more than ever, the politicians talk about what is happening in other countries. Usually, the opposition uses examples of other countries to attack the government. For example, Salvini said a few days ago that everywhere in Europe the schools are now reopening and that we are the only country that keeps the schools closed. On the other hand, the government do the exact opposite. For example, our Prime Minister, Giuseppe Conte, said recently that Italy is the first country in the world for a number of COVID-19 tests in relation to the population. So facing statements like that, in some case, like this last one about Giuseppe Conte, you can check the statements by yourself. You just need to find a reliable source with the number of tests per country and do the math with the population. In other cases, though, like the first one, the one about Salvini I just told you, it's very useful to have a network of foreign colleagues that can help you. In the example about schools, in some countries they were open but with exceptions and condition. In other countries, the opposite, they were closed but with condition and exception. So to understand and demonstrate with links to official documents this variety of situations, the help of fact-checker from other European countries was absolutely fundamental. So of course, we used very often the SOMA network during the pandemic, but also we create some personal relations with other colleagues. And now, if we need to have some information from France, Germany, Spain, UK, Greece, you name it, we know who to ask to have, reliable and quick answers. And this is very helpful because sometimes finding the right link or the right document in a foreign language can be very, very difficult. And from international cooperations also can blossom new ideas. For example, we discovered that a speech made by an Italian politician, Vittorio Sgarbi, in the Italian parliament, became viral in many other countries. And it was full of false news and false statements that we already checked. So, with the help of our foreign colleagues, we wrote a story about this spreading the false news all around the world, starting from Italy, and we exploited the situation to spread again the correct information. So, in conclusions, the lessons that we at Pagella Politica learned from this pandemic, and that probably will be useful in the next weeks and probably even more, are the importance for a fact-checking organization that analyzes politicians' statements to have the help of a debunking project that analyzes the news and the rumors on social networks, WhatsApp, and so on. Second, the importance to be cautious in our verdicts about scientific matters that can always change. The importance of having a pool of reliable experts that can help us in understanding a difficult topic or in finding the evidence we are looking for. Also, the importance of having a network of international colleagues that can help us in if the politician is saying something about other countries. The importance of saving all the materials in an order archive, so that helps you during your researches. And last but not least, the importance of giving a second look to what you have published in the last weeks of pandemic, because maybe there are patterns or cues for more in-depth analysis. So that's all. Thank you for listening. I hope you find some tip useful, and if there are any questions, please, I'm here.
So I wanted to pass it on to Sylvia and just remind all of you to please ask questions. We do have time kind of built into this, and I think that they are more than welcome. So as Brady kind of like sent it out in the chat, but in case you've been too preoccupied and absorbed listening to Tommaso and the other interesting speakers, please put the questions into chat and we'll come back and address them at the end. So Sylvia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Joanna. So I'm gonna share my screen. So you can see the other presentation I had prepared. Can you see my screen? Yes? Okay, good. So, okay, so my name is Silvia and I am Pagella Politica's project manager, meaning that I coordinate and basically have an eye on many of the international partnerships that Pagella Politica has in place right now. And Pagella Politica does have indeed quite a few partnerships in place right now. So you can see on screen quite a few of the most important ones that we have ongoing. But the one I really want to focus on in this presentation for our purposes is the SOMA project. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say a few words about the SOMA project for those of you who are not directly familiar with it, explain what it is basically, and then move on to say why partnership in this project has been so key to us during the COVID crisis, to why this collaboration has been so productive for us, and why would any fact-checking platform decide to collaborate internationally on fact-checking work. So SOMA is a 3 years long project which was financed by the European Commission under the Horizon 2020 scheme. The acronym SOMA stands for Social Observatory for Disinformation and Social Media Analysis, which basically is a title that tells it all about, tells a lot about the broader goal of this project, which is namely creating a community of stakeholders to jointly find disinformation. In order to do this, in order to achieve this goal, SOMA puts at disposal of its members and of the larger community of people, of stakeholders interested in this information, a number of resources. I've put a list of some of the most key resources that SOMA puts in place up there on the screen, but I'm going to mainly focus on the first two resources that you see there. So the first one is the network, and the second one is a platform. Since the very beginning of the project, 18 months ago, one of the main efforts of SOMA was the creation of this network of experts and stakeholders on this information. So we really wanted to create a group of people interested in this information to take initiatives, take collaborative initiatives on this information, to contrast this information. And how would this initiatives, individual initiatives meet? Through the platform. So SOMA put in place, structured a platform for real-time monitoring of this information, which has a number of tools that members can use. Now, my fellow project colleague, Nikos, who's speaking after me, will be focusing on give you a concrete idea of how the platform works, so how the tools work, which tools you can use and we can use and we were able to use during the current crisis to launch and perform our collective collaborative investigations. And I'm going to, on my side, tell you a little bit more about this network that we've come to put in place through the SOMA project. So this is what the SOMA network is looking like at the moment. So we have about 65 members representing 28 countries, 22 of which are European countries, and the rest of which are Australia, Georgia, Nigeria, Pakistan, Switzerland, and the US. And on the figure out there, you see the kind of skills and expertise of these 65 members. So you have fact-checking organizations, you have media monitoring organizations, you have journalist associations, and then last but not least, you have academic research and think tanks organizations. So it is really a mix of skills and expertises which ended up being extremely useful for us to help us extend the reach of our investigations and digging deeper into the topics we were investigating. So it is, as some of my colleagues mentioned before me, it has been a very productive collaboration for us with the SOMA project, which has led us to produce 13 collaborative investigations since the project start, which include the ones that I put in the list down there during the COVID crisis specifically. So we've had quite a few articles coming out of a process of collaborations with other members of SOMA relating COVID, and this have had quite a big exposure, quite a big visibility. So we've had very positive feedbacks on this collaborative investigations, and we're pretty happy with the work and looking forward to do more. But to bring all of this down to earth, because this is supposed to be a very practical, let's say, webinar, I wanted to mention plainly why we chose and we keep choosing to collaborate with the other fact-checking platforms or fact-checking or disinformation stakeholders in our daily life, and especially during the COVID crisis. So a very first reason why we decided, and any fact-checking platform, according to our advice, would choose to collaborate with other institutions working on this topic, is comparing. So I don't know about your countries, but in Italy, it's very common for politicians to bring up what other countries are doing in order to justify their positions and to legitimize their position. So they're saying, look, other countries are doing this, why don't you do this? And for example, during the COVID crisis, we recently had politicians from the opposition saying, why are schools not reopening before the summer in Italy? Look, everywhere else in Europe, schools are reopening before the summer. So we took that declaration, went to the SOMA network and said, we had this declaration, could you please help us check if it's true that in your countries schools are not opening? And that's what the screen, that the figure that you have there is is the investigations we produced. So we found out that no, it was not true that every other European country was opening up before the summer, and some were opening before, some were opening after, some others hadn't yet chosen when to open. So so comparing, it's a very important comparing to verify national politicians' claims. It's a very first good reason for us to collaborate at the international level. Comparing has also another side to it. So one side is verifying national politicians' claims, and the other side is promoting a more informed debate on specific measures. So you might want your readership to know what's happening in other countries if nobody's talking about it. So in order to be better informed about what's going on in similar countries or in countries that are having the same problems. And so an instance of this kind of work is the article we wrote, the investigation we wrote on regarding the self-declaration form. So in Italy, during the strict lockdown, we had to always carry with us a self-declaration form in order to, when we went out of our household. And this self-declaration form, for some reason, came at the very center, ended up at the very center of public debate. People, the general public, was very interested in this declaration, and a lot of debate on does it make sense or does it not? How does this work? Is this helping or not? So we went once again to our SOMA colleagues and said, hey, look, we're debating a lot about this in Italy. What about your countries? Do you have anything similar? How is it, etc. So up there on the screen you have, I put just an example, the Italian self-declaration form and the French self-declaration form. So we had a whole piece, investigative piece, talking about this. Then moving on, another good reason why you might choose to collaborate at international level with other organizations is just getting the broader picture. So as Camilla was saying, and Tommaso was saying as well, hoaxes are not very much about national borders, are not something that stays into national borders. They're just transcending those borders all the time. So we see hoaxes originating in one country and being taken in other countries and getting viral and then becoming global. And we had quite a few examples of this kind of transnational hoaxes during the COVID crisis. One of these was the relation between coronavirus and 5G technology. That was very big. And you can see up there on the screen a graph taken from Google Trends, which shows in a certain period, I think you can't see the dates very well, but it was between March and the beginning of April, how many searches on the web on the topic of coronavirus and 5G. And what that graph tells you is, on the one hand, that this kind of search was very popular, and on the other hand, that it was popular not just in one country, but at a global level. So you can really see that understanding hoaxes and debunking hoaxes is sometimes really about getting the broader picture. So understanding the how viral it is and where it gets viral and how. So moving on to another good reason why I think it's important to collaborate with other platforms and other stakeholders is the ability of setting guidelines, I said. But what I mean by setting guidelines is having the possibility of confronting your results and your findings with other organizations working on the same topics. So for example, we noticed during the COVID crisis that there was an increasing public appetite for reliable information. So we're often called upon to talk about, to tell, to answer to the question. So which are the reliable sources on COVID-19? Which are the good sites we can look at? And so we managed to, through the SOMA network, we managed to create and produce an article on the official, stating the official sources on COVID-19. And this again is something that it's time sensitive, or could be anything that comes out on COVID-19 is time sensitive. So it is of course a work that always has to be updated, but doing it collaboratively really helps setting standards out of the national borders. Then there is a final reason that I wanted to mention regarding why anybody might want to collaborate with at the international level with other organizations. And this is not actually this is not a fact check that we wrote in collaboration with SOMA actually, but it's something that for the future we'd like to do with the SOMA network. So this fact check has actually been mentioned by Camilla just before, and it's about you know, these Italians during the strict lockdown, Italians going to their balconies and singing songs. So we actually found out, thanks to a collaboration with the colleagues from the Taiwan Fact-Checking Center, that a Chinese spokesman for the information department of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so not just a random guy on the street, but a Chinese spokesman for the Foreign Affairs Ministry, had tweeted a video of Italian people in the balconies and on the streets singing and applauding with a background song of the Chinese national hymn. So as a way, and she was meaning, by posting this, she was meaning that Italians were congratulating the Chinese for their management of the COVID crisis. And this was, you know, thanks to our collaboration with the Taiwan Fact-Checking Center, we were able to show that this was false information, that the video was manipulated, and that the audio was different. And so it's very interesting to have a look at sometimes at what other countries, other people are saying about your country. So it's our readers, we found that these kind of pieces were pretty popular with our readership, and it's very interesting to see how these things work. So this is just a screenshot of the SOMA website, and up there on the menu you have a button, Investigations, where all of the investigations produced somehow through collaboration among SOMA members are published. So you can whenever you want, you can go and have a look at up there. Some of the investigations were written directly in English, and some others were written in the language of the organizations which started the investigation, and then a link or a summary is put on the SOMA website. A final slide on my side. So I just wanted to mention that if you do choose to go for international collaborations, you have to be ready to, first of all, it might sound banal, but it's important to thank, cite, and give visibility to collaborators. So if you've had a fellow organization, fact-checking organization, or any disinformation stakeholder helping you to produce a fact check, well, you really have to thank them and cite them, because they've spent time helping you. So it's important to give them visibility, and it's about ethics, and it's also about, you know, creating a positive environment in the fact-checking world. Then the second thing you must be ready to do is of course, you're taking support, but also give support. So you have to be ready, if you choose to collaborate with others, to not only you know, receive infos, but also be there to support other fact-checking organizations who need help. And even if you're super busy doing something else, well, if you've taken their help, then you have to give it back. So that's one thing you might want to consider when engaging in international collaborations. And then a third and last thing, be ready to step up. So once you've had the opportunity to collaborate, well, it's a good idea to try and systematize that collaboration, try and get ideas to actually take the collaboration deeper. And for example, we were thinking on the SOMA network, we're thinking now of creating some rolling basis investigations. So investigations that we create, and then we go back there like on a monthly basis with all of the collaborators to update the investigations depending on the new information that come out. So this is all from my side. And as Joanna said, we're happy to take questions anytime, so we can just leave them for the very end, if you prefer.
And I can just see that there's one question in there about the slides as well. So I think we can send around the slide decks after this.
If you want, I can answer the question about Vittorio Sgarbi. I see there's a question about the video circulating in Croatia and Western Balkans. How would you explain that? Okay, well, in this video, Sgarbi is saying, I just sum it up, that coronavirus is not responsible for all the death that we think and that the governments say. It's just less than 4% of the deaths that are dead because of COVID-19. And so basically the government is exploiting the situation to reduce the space for freedoms and constitutional rights. And this kind of message was really appreciated in some environments like the conspiracy theory, the people who believes in conspiracy theories, and also in some far right parties and movements all around the world. We saw spreading not only in the Balkans, but in Germany, for example, in South America, in Brazil, by some supporters of the President Bolsonaro, in Northern America, by supporters of Trump, even in Africa, at some point in South Africa and Mozambique. This kind of message by Sgarbi was shared and liked and spread a lot. But of course, it's false at its core, because it's true that less than 4% of the whole, COVID-19 deaths died because of COVID-19. The 96.3% of the deaths are death because other disease that just mixed with the COVID-19 causing the death in the end. But it's completely false to say that COVID-19 is not so dangerous, it's not killing that many people, because if you look at the expected mortality in these months of the year, usually we have in these 2 months, I'm just going with my memory, pardon me if the numbers are not precise, but in these 2 months, usually you have 100,000 people that die in Italy. And this year you had 150,000 people who had died in these 2 months. So you have 50,000 people more dead. And of these 50,000, around 30,000 are the one officially dead with the COVID-19. So probably we are even underestimating the number of people who died because COVID-19, of course, in interaction with other diseases. So what Sgarbi said was absolutely false, of course. And I think that his message was really appreciated, especially in some far-right movements and conspiracy theory movements, because it's functional to a narrative against, the government trying to reduce the movements, trying to reduce some rights, of course, and to enforce the social distancing. And so people who is angry against the government for those decisions, I think they are the one especially, taking advantage of the words of Sgarbi and spreading them from Italy into all the world. I see that Giovanni just posted our analysis. If you're fluent in Google Translator, I think you'll appreciate it.
Okay, so I think we could probably move on to Nikos now, if there's no more questions for the immediate.
So there's one question, but I think we can come back to it after the presentation, yeah? From Claudia. Anyways.
Nikos, the floor is yours.
Hello, so it's my turn. Hello, everyone. So let me share my screen. Because I will actually give you a demonstration of the tools that we have been using and people have been using for several years now for collaboratively working on verification. I presume you can see my screen, and you can see, I hope you can see the right screen with my browser. Okay, so What we have also provided for SOMA, for the members of the Observatory, of the European Observatory Against Disinformation, SOMA, which has already onboarded now around 65, I think it's exactly 65 organizations now from coming from more than 23 countries. And these organizations are working collaboratively under the coordination of Pagella Politica, but also the idea is also to have ad hoc collaborations between members to work together and utilize the expertise, one member from other members, and vice versa, to work together and fact-check information that is out there. So technologically speaking, what we have provided to them is a platform, a collaborative platform, which is called Truly Media, which is also a commercial platform that has been
I think we're having a problem with the audio. I can't hear Nikos. Nikos, we can't hear you anymore.
It looks like he disappeared altogether.
He's still there because we have his screen share still on the screen, and I can see him in the chat here. So if someone else wants to continue talking about the Truly Media platform, that we could have Nikos come back when he's able to. Sylvia or someone else from your end, would you like to talk more about the Truly Media platform while we're trying to get Nikos back?
I'm not quite in a position to, because he was going to actually show how the platform works and how you can open collections and how you can start collaborative investigations on there, because we normally use two kinds of channels to start these collaborative investigations. One is the this email that we have for SOMA members, and we just sent out an email to all of the members to say what we're working on, and so just basically invite people to collaborate. And the other way is starting a collection on the tool itself, so on the platform, or SOMA platform itself, where you can, as I said, open this so-called collections, which are basically search on specific topics that members can join directly. But it just sounds also abstract when I say it like this, and it's just so much clearer when Nikos shows it.
So perhaps you can all address some of the questions that have been piling up in the chat. Maybe we can do that in the interim while Nikos battles his way back through the technological wilderness. So I think that we left off with, sorry, I need my glasses.
Sure, I could jump in on this because I saw a couple of very interesting questions. Regarding the Sgarbi story, so the Italian politician, by the way, I have to say that Sgarbi is somewhat famous in Italy for being this kind of flamboyant, half crazy guy that once wrote on his curriculum for the Italian deputy Chamber of Deputies that his occupation was being an actor, which is obviously something that is not only not true, but also, I mean, wildly implausible. And so I don't think there has been through coordination and through orchestration by some groups specifically to spread around this kind of information. I see more like there is a group of, you know, inside the web where this kind of, I don't know, between anti-vaxxers or conspiracy theorists, there's kind of this constant scraping for this kind of videos from reportedly authoritative sources that talk about crazy things, and once they find one, in this case an Italian one, they publish it with subtitles and they say, see, now we have proofs. So it's more, I think, like the random episode where something became famous because it is it sticks to some narratives. For example, in the Italian Parliament, we had another case of an MP that gave basically this rant about conspiracy theories, Bill Gates, vaccination in India, you name it. I mean, it was, everything was inside it. It was like a 10-minute video that was made at the Italian Parliament. And so we were curious of knowing if also this one went viral somewhere else in the world, but we weren't able to find basically any translation that was that had become famous, and that was strange. I wasn't expecting that. I thought that since it had basically all the conspiracy theories around the pandemic, that would have been a big hit, but actually it wasn't. So I think that this Garby episode is more like of a serendipity moment, so to say. Then I see a question from Denis that asks if we publish correction of previous fact checks due to the scientific uncertainty. No, we didn't, as far as I remember, but Tommaso, correct me if I'm wrong, because I mean, the fact that we published something on a particular date, we thought that meant that was the best available information that was present at the moment. So we published other corrections during the past weeks, but it was more around the factual errors that we made or new data that we discovered, but not kind of a correction of the public record on the topic. And
if we want, I can jump in. Yes,
sure.
And, yeah, no, we didn't publish, you know, any errata corrige. Because what we wrote back then, it wasn't incorrect. What we said, it was the World Health Organization said this. So face masks are not very useful unless you are the one with COVID-19 or you are someone who is taking care of someone with COVID-19. So we just quoted, you know, a very reliable source like WHO. And then when the information changed, of course, in the articles, we said, okay, now the things are different. We have different sources. We have more studies. And by a general prevention point of view, face masks can be useful. But we didn't feel the need to correct our previous fact checking.
Yeah, and also in addition to that, I find that we had another fantastic question here about how to proactively engage with the more vulnerable audiences. That is kind of the $1 million question, because, for example, when we launched FACTA, we have tried to adopt from the beginning a very different approach compared to Pagella Politica, because Pagella Politica, being a political fact-checking website, has a lot of kind of top-bottom approach. So politicians say things, we check them, we give you the output. While on FACTA, for example, since we work with disinformation that goes viral on WhatsApp chats or whatever, then the approach has to be completely different. And we are much more proactive in telling the audience that we want them signal us the things that they want to be checked. So every morning we rank the alerts that we got through the day before, the night, and we say these are the most shared things, the things that people have more doubts on. So the first step that we are trying to do is to be super open to every input that comes from the audience, and that is something that we can do because we launched a project entirely devoted to non-political fact-checking, I think. But aside from that, I think it is really difficult to find ways to engage actually the people that would be most in need of that. And one of the things that we are planning to do, even we have not started to do that yet, is to go for the Facebook groups that, for example, we found that in Italian, there are these kind of self-help groups on the internet, on Facebook, where people say, actually, they're not journalists, just, I don't know, generally concerned citizens, and they say they have groups with names like, is this true or not, finding hoaxes, that kind of stuff. So one thing that we would like to do is to engage with those groups in order to reach exactly the kind of audience that we know is actually concerned about this information, but is not a professional fact checker and does not know how to check the information. So this is one of the things that we need to do in the next future. Final question. Media literacy educational programs for schools. We have started to work on that through one European project that is called Spotted. So we are, and one of the big fields where we plan to work in the kind of the next few months is to invest more on the media literacy side of our project, which until now haven't been so developed because we were kind of focused on the more journalistic kind of work. So yeah, I see that Nikos is back up, so I can stop talking and I'll leave the floor to him again.
Sorry everyone, I lost the network, and the thing is that I didn't realize also that I had lost the network. I kept talking to myself until I realized that nothing is working. But now I assume you can see my screen again, and I will go faster. I assume that you saw until the point where I was talking about the feeds and how you set up feeds and how you also look for information in sources that do not provide an API with this interface that we have put together that allows you also to translate queries to other languages and then direct the queries to sources like Google, like Twitter, like Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and the rest, CrowdHandle, 4chan, and get access to more content with the purpose of sending content into this collection, which, as I said before, is the container of content relevant to the investigations that you are carrying out. So this is the second part of the second step of organizing your content, where you can annotate different things that you would like on the items, or you can chat with the rest of the team here and discuss your opinions. You can also upload items which may be files on your hard disk, or you can add an item with just adding a URL of an internet page. So any content can be an item in this collection. So this acts like the place where you can gather everything. And then the third step is the verification step, where you get to by clicking on the details button of any of the items. So now you are trying to examine a particular item of your collection. And here we have gathered the checklist, the verification checklist, which is a structured list on all the areas that are interesting to be investigated and annotated. So whatever every researcher discovers, they note down in this in this list. So it acts like a collaborative notepad, let's say, which is in real time accessible to everyone. But it also gives you access to tools which you can use to investigate more the content. Like, for example, if we're talking about if the content includes image or video, we have included tools that can, for example, find visually similar photographs, or using reverse image search with different services like TinEye, Google, or Yandex, and you can compare what you find with what you have previously discovered. And you have information about where this item has been found, and you have a link to the image and link to the page, so you can immediately see where this photograph has been used again in the past. We have integrated image forensics algorithms, which you need to be more trained on to understand what these heat maps mean. But once you do that, this gives you information on whether this image has been tampered or not, and what all the metadata that is found behind this photograph. Other simple tools like cropping and performing, for example, reverse image search on the cropped area, or for annotating areas, or for investigating with a magnification glass better the image. And such tools we also have for video, for extracting frames and doing this kind of analysis on frames. There is another important tool that connects to Truly Media but also stands on its own, where you can analyze sources on Twitter. This works on Twitter. So what this does is it gives you a very thorough analysis of a source on Twitter by providing you quickly and user-friendly way a lot of metrics structured under activity, network, and influence. So under activity, you can see the latest activity of the source. You can see the times of the day that the source is active, so that you can understand if this is an account handled by a single person or by a group of persons, or whether it is an automated account. We show the posting frequency, the popular tweets, the recent tweets, recent replies, hashtags, so that you can see what's the expertise of this account, the users that are mostly mentioned, the users that are mostly retweeted, and you can see here on the side the exact retweets or mentions of these users, so that you can see if this account is trying to amplify another account for positive or for negative reasons. We show the type of tweets, so is it mostly original tweets or retweets, replies. We show the content, the type of content that you find in the tweets. We show what websites are mostly mentioned, what languages are used, what are the posting tools that are used, what are the posted images, the recent posted images. This is about the activity. Then about the network, we show the most important followers, the most influential followers. Then we show the followers. We get a sample of 5,000 followers and so on, categorize them under the ones that have normal activity, the ones that have exceptionally low and exceptionally high activity. Exceptionally low are accounts like these, which are usually fake accounts, very few tweets, very few followers. And the accounts which are extremely active are usually automated accounts. Then under influence, we show the lists, the public lists under which you can find this account to be listed. And we have automatic translation everywhere, so that you can instantly translate into English from any language in the world. We show the average likes and retweets and a timeline of the most recent likes and retweets received. We show the mentions received, the replies, the most popular and recent replies, the most popular people accounts that mention this account, and the accounts that mention this account most frequently. And finally, we saw related profiles, meaning accounts that use these words from the name of the account, either in the name field or the profile field. This way you can find relevant or stolen accounts. And up here we have a series of indicators, like bot indicator, which in this case is 100%, but why? It shows you the reasons why, because there is no rest during the day, so it posts all times of the day. It is there's a similar time gap between a series of successive tweets. There are many rules that fire up depending on the account that you are investigating. So for example, if you see another one that is more characteristic, that is actually a bot, you would see more interesting rules like, again, no rest during the day, only posting retweets, almost all tweets contain mentions, and so on. We have an activity tag that, again, can be high, medium, or low, and there are some rules that are fired up in every account, and in a similar way for the influence. So this is for investigating sources on Twitter, and it connects to Truly Media at this point. And the idea that behind Truly Media, as you understand, is that the whole team investigates the items that are gathered. They annotate whatever they find. There are exporting capabilities. There is a history, a log that shows whatever everyone notes down in the checklist, so that the team knows what information comes from everyone. And finally, it is the team that decides how they would like to label this item, which information is brought back into the collection and can be considered on the level of the collection. And when the collection is larger, you can see that it is more interesting because you can annotate more things. You can filter with different tags, with different sources. You can assign tasks and filter with jobs that had been assigned, and so on. So I think I can stop here. I hope you get the general idea of what these tools can do for you, and I am open for questions.
All right, thank you. That's the end of our presentations, I believe. And we have, well, we're at time. But I mean, if you're all amenable, maybe at least take a couple of the questions that were there left hanging. So I'm not sure who would like to respond to them. So I don't know the degree to which somebody answered Yaroslav's longer question about public media literacy and all of that, and also the kind of using this to kind of increase Italian public resilience. And then Camille, oh, there we go, had a small short question which he just posted as well. That's more technical and I think aimed very specifically to Nikos. So I guess the resilience question is one, lessons learned out of all of this, and the second is and I think final one, unless somebody has something else to add since we're at time, to Nikos.
Yes, to discover coordinated operations. One way of doing that is setting up your feeds and exploring the content to find the same item coming from different sources so that you can put everything together. There are other ways also which we have not integrated yet of looking at networks of information flows, which is something that is coming. It's a standalone tool at SOMA, but it has not been integrated yet in Truly Media, which shows the communities behind the similar content and show the information flow within and between and across communities. So that would give you an idea of on coordinated operations, and that would be closer, I think, to what our colleague Camille is asking.
Thank you. And I guess the final question, I'm not sure who to direct this to, maybe Giovanni as director, what you've actually come out of this in terms of thinking more broadly of how to increase the resilience of society in Italy to disinformation. I mean, that's also the million-dollar question, I think, for all of us, is why people believe garbage. You know, tabloids have always been around, so that's nothing new, but the speed and urgency and frankly, the consequences of the disinformation seem particularly radical now. So I don't know if you have some closing words on this.
Well, that's really the million-dollar question, but the point is that it is very difficult to, as of today, to be perceived as a trusted source of information. And there is a general distrust against media and information sources that in some way create this negative loop where if you become famous or known or mainstream, then at the very same moment, a growing number of people will start to think that you are in some way pushing some agenda, or you have some second reasons why you are so successful or widespread. And we are not at that stage yet, by the way. So I think that the only way that we can focus on, the only thing that we should focus on is kind of putting up the right process. And the right process means to be open toward the audience, to try to give all the information and all the sources, all the links to the original sources, being super transparent in how you check things. And so the fact that you are the most open and transparent possible can give you, at least you will be okay with your conscience, okay? And then at the end of the day, in that way, you can hope to grow until you are able to make a difference inside the information environment. Now, to be able to also convert someone that is kind of in a different mindset, and I don't know, to try to convince someone that is very deep into conspiracy theorists or whatever, I think that we have to also have another effort to do. And the one thing that I think we should do is not only being open and transparent, but, and sorry if I sound some kind of, maybe I sound weird, but really to try to be kind. And with this, I mean that I don't believe personally that it is a successful approach to bash people that spread conspiracy theories, for example, or disinformation. It is not successful to insult them or to say that they are dumb, stupid, uninformed, unable to get the fact right. And I think that is the worst way of acting, because it is in that way probably people that follows you, your audience, sees you as this kind of leader of whatever movement, or this kind of brave soldier against the disinformation. But on the other hand, you are just adding polarization in a deeply polarized environment. So the thing that I think is that, of course, we have to be the best that we can in our work, but we have also to make an effort to reach the audience in a way that is not confrontative, not insulting, not derogatory toward the people that believe for some reason in this kind of things. Now there is a super small number of people that does that for political or economical or whatever reason, and those are clearly the bad actors. So I'm not saying that those are this kind of good guys or whatever. No, they are not. But the fact that they can have success in the disinformation that they push comes from the fact that they are able to convince thousands of people that believe in that bad information in good faith. And in order to talk to them, you have to be, I think, kind. I don't think of another word to say that. And that is kind of my closing thoughts on the matter.
Amen. I mean, there's, I think, not enough kindness and in the world anyways. And I don't think ever anybody pointing out that somebody's an idiot has never actually won anybody over, I don't think. So I tend to agree. You know, the art of respectful disagreement seems to have taken a back seat lately. So thank you all very much. Thank you to Giovanni, Tommaso, Silvia, and Camila for your contribution, and Nikos, sorry, for your contributions. I found it really interesting. I hope that we can find a way to kind of like deepen engagement over the time and broaden your network a little bit more. So I think that it's something that is useful and for everybody and something that everybody's struggling with. So thank you very much. Have a good rest of day, evening to you. And we shall see you again.
Thank you.
Shortly. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye to everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Goodbye.